Okay, so hi everyone. In this video, we're gonna do we're gonna do we're gonna fill in the unit circle. So a lot of people find this really difficult. At least from what I know. I know for me it was really hard at first, but if you think about it, it's not really that difficult. I mean, yeah, it took me like about about a month to get it. But you just have to keep practicing it. So one of the things that I like to start with is actually you know, doing each one of these. So like for the y-intercepts and the x-intercepts, so you do 0, 1, and then over here you have 1, 0. And then over here you would have 0, negative 1. And then over here you would have negative 1, 0. And that's the easy part. So, the hard part starts when you have to label your degrees and your radians, as well as your, your coordinates. So, right here we start with 90, and then we go on to saying, okay, so it goes from 90, and then we say 180, and then over here we have, I don't know if over here, hold on. I think over here is 270 degrees. Because there's no one right here, so I'm thinking that this corresponds to. And then we have 360 degrees, so or 0 degrees, since that's where we start and end. So so then what I like to do is I like to say, okay, right here, so I'm gonna highlight right here is where the unit circle is kind of between 90 and 0 degrees. It's split in half, so I label this part 45 degrees. And then and then from there, so obviously one way you can remember this part, like the way you would know what goes right here, is if you think about your if you think about your 30, 60, 90 triangle. So we know that definitely there's a 30 degrees in here, so it would be right here. And then also we're missing 60, so we have 60 over here. And then we have to convert those into radians. So for example, if you have 90 degrees times pi over 180, you would get 90 pi over 180, and you would cross those out and you would get 9 pi over 18, which equals pi over 2. So this one would be pi over 2. And then of course, you would have, this one would be pi over 3. And if you convert every one of these, you would have pi over 4, pi over 6, and then you would have 0 pi right here. 0 pi, or also 2 pi, since they're both the same one. Since it starts and ends here, so then you would have, okay, and then going on over here, you would have 90, and then the way I like to do this part is I like to say, okay, from 60 to 90, you went up by 30, so then that means that from 90 to over here, you would go up by 30, so it would be 120. And then from 45 to 90, you went up by 45. So then from 90 to over here, you would go up by 45, which would be 135 degrees. And then from 30 to 90, you would do plus 60. So then from 90 to over here, you would do 150 degrees. And then from and then of course we have the 180 there already. So then the 120, we would convert that to radians. So we would say 120 times pi over 180. That would be 120 pi over 180. And we cross the zeros out, get 12 pi over 18. And that would be about, or my bad, it would be about 2 pi over 3. So this one would be 2 pi over 3. And then 135, you would do 135 degrees times pi over 180. And you would have 135 pi over 180. And if you try to simplify that, I think it would be about 3 pi over 4, if I'm not mistaken. So this one would be 3 pi over 4. And then for 150, you would do the same thing. You get 15 pi over 18. And divide by 3. You get 5 pi over 6. So this one would be 5 pi over 6. And then if you do this one, you know that it goes 0, pi over 2, pi. So this one's just pi. So it goes, one of the ways in which you can start memorizing the unit circle, the way I started, was memorizing like 0, pi over 2, pi, and then 3 pi over 2 over here. And then 2 pi, which we already have it there. But another shortcut way of actually doing this is if you look at, if you if you look at this part and this part, and then you ask yourself, okay, how much did I, if you go counterclockwise, you're adding 180. So, and half a circle is 180 degrees. So you would say 45 plus 180, I believe. But I mean, I don't want to be too sure about that, since I'm not really, I don't want to make any mistakes. So let me see, hold on. So it would be 45, and then you would say, so you would say 45, actually, never mind, that's actually the way that I did it. So you would say 45 plus 180, and then you would say, and then you would say 225 for here. So this would be 225. And then for, let's see, for 30 degrees, you would add another 180. So this would be 210. And then for 60 degrees, you know that 60 is right here. So it corresponds to this side. So then you're going counterclockwise a half of a circle, so it's going to be plus 180. So then you have, right here, you have 60 plus 180, and that's going to be, I believe it's 240. Not. Yeah, it's 240, so you would have 240 degrees over here, and then you would just say plus another 30, which is 270. And then, so then you have 210, so then you would convert 210 to radians, and you would get 21 pi over 18. If you simplify that, you get 7 pi over 6. So right here you would put 7 pi over 6. And then if you have 225 times pi over 180, you would get 225 pi over 180. And I believe that that's divisible by 5. So you would do divided by 5, and then you get 45 pi over, give me a second, guys, 36. And then you would do 45, you would divide it by 9, and you would get 5 pi over 4. So then you would have, for 225 degrees, you would have 5 pi over 4. And then over here, 240, you would do the same thing. So you would do 240 times pi over 180 and get 24 pi over 18. And you would divide by 6 and get 4 pi over 3. And over here you would have 4. So over here you would have 4 pi over 3. And then so then once you're done with that, then you would do, so then you would ask yourself to get from, so you know that it goes like this. So to get from here to here, you would add 30 because you added 30 to get from here to here. And this angle right here is the same amount as this one in terms of right triangles, you know. So you would have, so it would be plus 30 degrees. So this one would be 300. And then 300 in terms of radians would get 300 pi over 180. You would cross this out and you would get 30 pi over 18. And you would divide it by 6, so you would have 5 pi over 3. And then, if you know that from, you know that the corresponding angle for this one, for 5 pi over 3, would be 2 pi over 3, and it's going again in the counterclockwise direction. So to get from here, to get from 2 pi over 3 to 3 pi over 4, you would go this way, and then it's going in the same direction, so it would be from 120 to 135, it would be plus 15. So then from here to here, it has to be plus 15. So you would have 315 degrees. And 315 degrees in terms of radians you would have, let's see, so 315 divided by 5 would be 63 pi, and 180 divided by 5 would it be 36, and then you would divide by 9, we get 7 pi over 4. So for 315 degrees, you would have 7 pi over 4. And then for this one, you would know that, you would say, well, what's the last one that's missing? Well, basically, if you look from yeah, actually in this part you have to be very careful because you don't want to get mistaken. So basically the way I look at it is you went from 0 degrees to 30 degrees over here. So that means that if you're going from here to here to this line right here, you're gonna say that it's 330, because then from 330 to here would be 360, just like it is from 0 to 30, because these two are like the same, they go the same amounts. And then, so then you would basically convert that to radians. So you would do times pi over 180 and get 33 pi over 18. And that would be about 11 pi over 6. And then one of the things that I did to memorize my my coordinates for the unit circle was I did so I did this kind of, mnemonic device, or it's not really a mnemonic device, but it's a way to memorize it. Just remember it goes 2, 3, 4, 6, 0. So then you would say, so then from there, if you really try to study your coordinates, you would say that it's 0, 1, and then it goes 1/2 the square root of 3 over 2. And then if I know, if you don't know what goes here, but you know what goes here, basically, it's pretty easy to understand. In reality, you don't have to memorize these two. You just have to memorize these 3 right here. So you would say so the way I like to memorize it is that first goes the fraction without the square root, and then goes the square root. So it goes, so the way I like to say it is like, first you memorize the So first goes the fraction and then the square root, and then goes the square root and then the fraction. So you would say so this would go first, and then this would go second, and then whatever's in between those would be, of course it would be pi over 4, but the way that I memorize this is by saying this over and over again. So you would say 0, 1, 1/2 square root of 3 over 2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 3 over 2, 1/2, and then 0, and then 1, 0. But, in reality, you just have to do these 3. That's kind of how I memorized it. I know that doesn't work for most people. Another way you can memorize it is if you think about your right triangles. That to me was actually harder because I just didn't know how to do it. But if you if you want to do it using the right triangle method, that's fine. You would say, that, so you would say cosine of theta, comma, sine of theta, since this is x and this is y. So, you would say cosine of theta is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse, so you would say 1 over the square root of 2, comma 1 over the square root of 2, and so you would say the square root of 2 over 2, comma square root of 2 over 2, and that's how you would memorize for a 45-degree angle, which is this. But anyways, let's move on to the actual coordinates. So again, the way I like to think about it is if you do, so think about this, you would say 1/2 square root of 3 over 2, and then you would say square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2, and then you would say square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. And this is basically what I memorized mostly, or what are these 3? Because they were the ones that I had the most trouble memorizing, and in terms of radians, these weren't really that hard to memorize. The one that really threw me off though was the pi over 6, but you just have to remember that there's no pi over 5 after pi over 4, so you would say pi over 2, pi over 3, pi over 4, pi over 6, and then 0. And then over here, since we have, once you have the first quadrant, the rest of it is pretty easy. For example, right here, this one corresponds to 11 pi over 6. It's just a different, this side would be negative, comma, negative, and then you would say, so this one would be negative the square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. And then 7 pi over 4, we know that pi over 4 corresponds to the square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. So you would say negative square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2. Actually, no, forgive me, it's square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2. And then this one is, it would be, I think, so this one would be the square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. And then, for this one, it would be 1/2 negative square root of 3 over 2. Give me 1 second, guys. 2. Okay, yeah, so sorry, I just wanted to make sure I was doing it right. So then for 4 pi over 3, you would have it corresponds to pi over 3. So then you would have negative 1/2 negative square root of 3 over 2. And then 5 pi over 4 corresponds to pi over 4. So you would say negative square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2. And then 7 pi over 6 corresponds to negative square root of 3 over 2, negative square root of 3 over 2. And then you would have negative 1, 0 there. And then 5 pi over 6. You would have negative square root of 3 over 2. And then 1/2. And then you would have negative square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2, and then you would have negative 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. So yeah, I hope this helps in a way. Please let me know if there's any other way that you actually learn this other than doing this, or, using right triangles, or even, I know there was the hand trick as well, which I wasn't good at the hand trick. But yeah, I hope this helps. And in the next video, we're gonna do trig equations. But yeah, I hope this helps, and I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.